Okay, it is finally done. Those 3 boxes from the storage unit are finally all organized, alphabetized, and sorted in these 2 boxes. And in many ways, you could look at this as a total and complete comic book nightmare. Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Dominic, the Primetime Treasure Hunter. I took a day off to do some inventory restructuring, and Mrs. Primetime is helping me by getting some things listed on Facebook Marketplace. And if you remember, earlier in the year, I found these for free at a garage sale. She just listed them on Facebook Marketplace for 20 bucks, and they've sold in a matter of minutes. So someone is coming by to pick those up shortly. And another thing that we're doing today is we are trying to clear some space so I can move the Primetime Treasure Mobile into here. And this is still some leftover from that storage unit haul that I picked up about a year ago. So we are going to unbox these 3 tonight. That's probably as far as we'll get. However, as you can see, we still have some more work to go. So this is something that still needs to get unboxed. All of these need to get unboxed, and these up here. And yes, for those of you who are doubting me, I did not look inside of these boxes. When you have about 100,000 comic books, having these here are just extras that I have to look to. So let's get inside with Mrs. Primetime and Daisy and unbox these comic books. Oh, and remember this coffee table that I broke the glass on a few weeks ago? Well, Mrs. Primetime just sold it on Facebook Marketplace for 25 bucks. So they're coming to pick that up a little bit later. So I'll mostly be out of the doghouse for this one. I've done a lot of things to get extra brownie points, so I'm almost there, everybody. So it's nighttime now, and I've brought the boxes in, and we're ready to do the unboxing. And Daisy looks like she wants no part of it. She has found these blankets and pillows that she's just gonna nest in right now. We'll see if she comes down when we take the comics out of the boxes. Sometimes she comes by to inspect, but I don't know. I'm kind of doubtful. Looks like she's out for the count right now. So, all right, let's get to those boxes. So these are the 3 boxes that we're gonna try to get through. We'll see how far we get tonight. Put a little fire on. I thought that would look nice in the background. It's getting a little cold outside, so these are the 2 boxes we are going to sort into. Mrs. Primetime is going to help me out, at least for a little bit, and let's dig in. Oh, she couldn't resist. She couldn't resist. She had to come by and check out the boxes. Now, Daisy, you tell me which box we should start with. Daisy, which box should we start with? Miss Primetime's trying to push you over here. Which one should we start with? All right, let's see. Which one are you going to go to first? This one? All right, we're going to go with this one. Daisy, pick that one out. All right, so let's see what we got in here on the top. Oh, we're starting out with some G.I. Joe right here. I like to see that. That's good. And, oh, it looks like we have a little dip there. And let's see what it looks like in here. There's a few that are pushed up against the edge, but I don't think they're too badly damaged. Okay, so we will just start pulling them out, and Daisy trying to get in the box. And basically what I'll do is if I see anything that's noteworthy, then I'll tell you a little bit about it, and we'll see where we go from there. Because if I show you every single comic book, you're going to get bored to death. So I'll just pull out the ones that look interesting that I could tell you something about. Okay, so we have already emptied this first box, and what I'm going to show you now is not something that's super valuable, but I want to show you what I like to do with these. This right here is called Marvel Universe, and this one here is an update. But if you've never seen these before, they're really neat. Inside of them, Daisy's looking on, they've got these biographical sketches of the characters like this. And so they tell you a lot about it. They're a good way to learn a lot about the characters in the Marvel Universe. And they have one like this for the DC Universe as well. Now this one here you could see is damaged. This is not something I would try to sell as an individual issue like this. And there's 3 of them here that are coverless. So you might think, oh, well, they're not worth anything. We can't do anything with them. Well, they're not worth anything trying to sell them as official handbook to the Marvel Universe copies. Not like that. You have to think creative. So what we like to do with these is we take these, because if you look inside, there's lots of pictures in here that you could use yourself if you wanted to do crafting. And I know I've talked about that before. But what we could also do is take a bunch of these, put them together, and make a big lot of old damaged comic books and call it a crafting lot. And believe it or not, people will pay for these. Now, I like to put them up on auction. I have one on auction right now. I just did one like this with some coverless Mad magazines that sold for $15.50, and there were like 15 of them in there. But individually, I literally would not have been able to sell them. And so I do that now with some damaged comic book lots. I have two actually on auction. So there's just something to think about. When you buy like a storage unit worth of comic books or a big comic book collection, you are going to come across damaged books. And instead of throwing them out, put them together into lots. You could do a coverless lot. You could do break them down by decades. Like I have one right now on my eBay store that's for 60s and 70s, or you could do 70s and 80s, or just 70s. And they could have covers or no covers, and just say that they're all damaged, and you're selling them for people who want to read the story, they want the information, or they want to do crafting, but they don't want to pay up to pay the full retail price for the issues. And so put them up on auction, and you'll be surprised what you could get for it. So that's my little tip on these guys. All right, well, we are going to crack open this box as well and take a look what's inside here too. So Mrs. Primetime is going to work on this, and I am going to start looking through some of these other ones here. And if there's anything interesting, I will tell you. So this is one that I look for. It's Gen 13. I've talked about it before in other videos, but this one here is actually a trade paperback. You could tell that from the thickness of the side. So it's basically a collection of regular Gen 13 comic books, which I actually saw one around here earlier that I could pull out. But this one here, what you want to do for trade paperbacks is you want to look at the printing. So you could see there, that's a third printing, not as desirable as if it was a first. The first printings have recently sold easily for about 11, 12 bucks. The cheapest you could even find one of these right now is as a third printing for around $30. So hopefully we could get somewhere around 10 bucks for this book, and that would be good. So this is a Gen 13 comic book, and you could see how thin it is compared to a Gen 13 trade paperback. Another thing you'll notice is that this one is published by Wildstorm, whereas this one is published by Image. And for Gen 13, what you are looking for are the ones published by Image. These are not so valuable, and they would be basically tossed in with something like this to be able to get rid of it and sell it. Another thing we are coming across right now are some more Lady Death issues. They sell very well for me. Mrs. Primetime just found another one here. And a person who was into collecting these comics bought a lot that were related to powerful female characters. And here's Vampirella, who I've talked about before. This one's not so popular, but she is well known in the DC line, Zatanna. You'll always know her because she always wears this black magician hat. So that's how you'll identify her. A lot of times you will see her in like art pieces and stuff, and if you don't know that that's the way to identify her is with that black hat, you won't be able to figure out the name to look her up. So anyway, so far, not so bad. Got some good things here. Okay, now for those of you who are new to comic books, you might think, wow, this is great. You have issue 0, you have issue 1, and you have issue 2. You have the first 3, right? Well, actually, no, you got to look carefully at them. So you see this one says Lady Death Boundless. This one here is Lady Death number 1, but it's number 1 of 2, and this is the actual title of the story that you're looking for. It's a mini series, so that one's called The Gauntlet. This one over here, yeah, it's number 2, but it's of a different one, and that's 2 of 5 for Dark Alliance. And if you remember back to my other unboxings, we found other Lady Deaths. So at the end, what I have to do is integrate these different boxes together so I could piece these together into sets, and that's eventually what I'll do. Another thing that might be interesting for you if you're brand new into comics is you may wonder, why does it say issue 0? I thought they all started at issue 1. Basically, an issue 0 is a story that they usually come out with later on after they've done number 1 and number 2 to explain a backstory to the comic book. And one last thing I want to tell you about Lady Death is, again, something related to publishers. So over here, you can see that the publisher is Chaos, and that is the main company you normally see publishing Lady Death. But this one here is Boundless. Boundless is not the title. It's actually the publisher, and you could see that because right there is actually the Boundless logo, and over here inside you could see that as well. There are a lot of Boundless issues out there, and even if you find mixed ones, random ones, they're still desirable even though they're new comic books. So recently, for example, I had 7 mixed issues of these, and they were like issue 10, 19, 26. They weren't even consecutive, and they sold for $22.50. So if you're getting them for about 10, 15 cents a piece, those are still good flips. So be on the lookout for Lady Death Boundless. Okay, so one item that I'm going to show you that Mrs. Primetime and I are kind of cracking up about is this one right here, which is Frank Miller's Sin City. And the reason for it is that while I told you that we have not looked inside any of these boxes when they've sat out there for about a year, this one has kind of peeked through the top for this last year. So we've kind of seen this there. I knew the Sin City title was there, and it kind of got a little dusty. So fortunately it didn't do any permanent damage to it. I just got up and wiped it off and everything. So now it's nice and clean. But this is volume 6, and you could sell single volumes of this for people who are just missing a certain volume, or they started it number 1 and number 2, number 3, and they're just trying to build it up piece by piece. Not everyone goes out and buys the whole collection at once because of expense, so they purchase them one at a time, and some collectors like doing it that way for things that are out of print. And so this is something that's out of print, and you want to look out for this. 2 things here is the Sin City title, and also Frank Miller, very famous in the comic book industry for his work on Daredevil and some other things, including the Sin City series, which is basically a crime-based comic book. If you look inside, you know, there's going to be a lot of violent stuff inside, a lot of blood, black, red, white, that type of stuff. So this one here is like a $10 to $15 book. Right now, the cheapest this is available on eBay is $16.77. So I would price it at, say, $14.99, and, you know, again, try to sell it somewhere between 10 and 15. So not a ton, but it does add up. Doesn't cost a lot to ship this out. Again, be on the lookout for Frank Miller. He's not only an illustrator, but he's also a writer. Uh-oh, everyone. Looks like we have a cat fight here. What are we gonna do? Looks like this is a Miss Marvel title, and Miss Marvel's pretty popular, so it's good to have some Miss Marvel books. And speaking of cats, I really like Catwoman, and we've got a bunch of Catwoman comic books here. It's good to have anything with the Joker on the cover, especially given the popularity of the recent Joker film. And there's some consecutive issues here, so we've got number 69. We've got number 70 here as well. That's a really cool cover. 71, and there's 72. So, and this is Zatanna, who I was talking about earlier, and you could see Catwoman back there. So we will just continue to look as Mrs. Primetime is giving me the evil eye right now as I talk about all these women comic books. And while I'm doing that, I might as well bring this one up. I've talked about her before, and this is like one of the few that I could actually show you the cover and not break any kind of rule. But this is Tarot, which is the Black Rose. I've done very well selling these comic books when I used to sell them on the regular eBay site, but the problem is I had to move them to the adult-only site because eBay was basically saying it was a adult book, and it is an adult book, so you should really put it over there. So that's where all mine are, despite the fact that almost everyone else has them on the regular site. but they sell way better on the regular site than the adult version of eBay. But these are some of the other comics in here. Some of these are no-name titles that are not valuable, but there are some good ones here as well, so it's just kind of a mixture. All right, we're making progress. We are going through our last box here, and we've got stuff scattered all over the place. We've got some good titles. We've got Batgirl, we've got Venom, we've got Tomb of Dracula Presents. I always say anything with Dracula in it is good to look for. Daisy is passed out over there on the pillow. We've got Tarot Witch of the Black Rose, and this is one of the few that I can actually show you because she actually has some clothes on, and a lot of the other ones there's barely anything on her, and I really can't show it to you in fear of not being a family-friendly channel anymore. So I actually moved all of these over to the adult section because they are for mature readers, as you can see right there. Okay, one of the things that I want to point out here is all of these different stacks of comic books. For the most part, this is a part of the collection here with these 3 boxes where the titles are really just random and scattered all over the place. And if you want to make any sense of what you have, this processing stage is important because you really have to go through it, and then you have to organize it and put it alphabetically, you know, like you could see me doing here. This is all in alphabetical order here. So this is something that does take some time, and this is the thing that will really kind of make a lot of people give up because, you know, it does require a lot of time and effort. If you have someone who can help you out, like, you know, Mrs. Primetime, who's helping me put some of these in alphabetical order, it definitely could cut down your time significantly. So that's something to consider. But you know, this is something that I did all the time as a kid by myself. I loved organizing comic books and putting them in order and getting them in these boxes and stuff. I just have fun doing that kind of stuff. But if it's not, you know, something that you like, enjoy doing, making order out of a mess, this might not be the thing you want to get into because it really can test your patience. So there's a lot of money in comic books, but, you know, sometimes it does require, you know, this type of time to put into it to get it all sorted properly. So Mrs. Primetime is off to sleep with Daisy. The fire is getting a little bit lower, but I'm still making some progress and I'm still chugging along here. I have managed to put together some complete sets for some mini series. I'll show you one example. This one here. There's a lot of X-Men books, and this one here is X-Men Apocalypse versus Dracula. So that's a pretty decent set. I mean, those 4 books could sell for as high as $30, depending on condition, and the condition is pretty decent with these. They can go for as low as $13. So somewhere between that price range is where I would expect to sell those for. There's some other cool books here too. I said anything with Joker and Harley Quinn here. Now it's Joker's Asylum 2, and it's a Harley Quinn book. It's a one-shot book, which you could see here. DC does that a lot, where they put the one-shot right there. One shot means it's not part of an ongoing series. It's just one story encapsulated in this book. This book alone, you know, sold for about $14 max. So, you know, you could get probably $10 to $14 out of just this one book. Michael Turner's Fathom, I've talked about this before. Michael Turner was a great artist. He did this series called Fathom. He died at an early age from cancer, and so his works are pretty sought after. So this is just one example, and it shows the character Fathom. And I just like to take them and put them into little lots and sell them off together like that, unless I find a particular issue that's you know, quite valuable. But you know, these are just 2 kind of random ones that I found here. In fact, this one's a primer guide, kind of tells you about the series and the character. So Michael Turner Fathom, though, always look out for anything with his name on it or anything with Fathom, because it does have a strong collector's base for it. Now let me show you what this situation looks like right here and kind of how far we've come with this process. All right, so right here below the fireplace, you can see here that there are some little stacks that Mrs. Primetime left behind for me to go through. These are mostly alphabetized from what she told me. And then here you could see there's some additional stacks that I need to go through. They are not alphabetized yet. You could see here, now there's 2 long boxes. I got rid of the short box because I realized I had a lot more comic books that were going to need to go in here to fit them all. And so basically for a long box like this, when they don't have the bags and the boards on them, you're going to be able to fit about 400 comic books in each box. So this is going to be a total out of those 3 boxes of about 800 comic books. So still have a little bit more sorting to do, and then I'll do a final wrap up and tell you overall what this collection was like. Okay, well, you'll notice that the fire is out, and that's because it is another day. It is now Monday evening, just got back from work. I tried to get as much done as I could last night, but just ran out of time. So Mrs. Primetime really helped me out a lot today. I'm gonna turn the camera around and show you what she did, and it's gonna make my job a lot easier right now. Okay, so this is what we have left. Mrs. Primetime sorted these in alphabetical order, and when I left this morning, they were not in alphabetical order. And there's a lot of comics here. There's just so many different titles, so it really would have taken me a lot of time to do this when I came back. So big time saver. All I've got to do now is take these and I've got to organize them in the boxes and put them in the boxes in alphabetical order, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's all done. Why, hello, Daisy. We are almost done. Just a little bit more to go. Let's finish this up, all right? Okay, it is finally done. Those 3 boxes from the storage unit are finally all organized, alphabetized, and sorted in these 2 boxes. And in many ways, you could look at this as a total and complete comic book nightmare. Now, one reason why people would say that is because all of these comic books are new. They're modern age comic books. And while there are some modern age comic books that are worth a lot of money, there are none in these 2 boxes that are like that. So how do you find a way to extract value out of newer comic books that individually just don't have a lot of worth? Now, another reason why this could be a nightmare for a lot of people to deal with is because if you look through, and I'm just going to flip through, I'm not taking anything out yet specifically to show you. I just want to give you an idea as I thumb through these. There's a lot of different titles. I mean, they are just scattered all over the place. Now, the ones that are there do tend to lump together. So for example, you can see we have Birds of Prey 109, then we have 110, then we have 111, then we have 112. So they do tend to run consecutive. That's a good thing about this collection, but there's just so many different titles. I mean, they just go all over the place. There's usually not a consecutive run that goes more than maybe 7 or 8. So they're just all over the place. And you could even see here as well. I pulled out all of the Tarot Witch of the Black Roses. I pulled out some G.I. Joe. I pulled out some X-Men miniseries. I pulled out Lady Death. So there's some that are just not in here. There's a small amount of Damaged comic books that I pulled out. I showed you some of those coverless ones earlier, so I'm just going to throw those into a coverless lot. But that's an early example in this video of how I was telling you you could get some value out of comics that otherwise you wouldn't be able to sell individually. So you get the idea of me going through this. There's just so many different titles. And now I'm going to give you some examples of what to do if you wind up getting a comic lot like this. How could you just, get the value out of it that you might otherwise not get if you tried to sell these books individually? Okay, strategy number 1 is lot things together by publisher. So for example, if you look over here, we have this series called 21 Down. Now, these are not worth anything, even if you put them together like this. I often talk about making lots, but sometimes if you make lots out of something nobody wants, then it's not going to matter. You're still not going to get value out of a title that people are not looking for. So what do we do with these? Do we just throw them in the garbage? What is the solution? Well, let's look right here at the publisher. It says WS. This is actually a company called Wildstorm. And there are some people that just like Wildstorm books in general. Now, there's not a lot of people out there that do that and collect those, but there are some people who will buy a random lot of Wildstorm comic books. They'll have different titles in them mixed together. You certainly would want to mix some more popular titles in there, like the Gen 13 comic books. There's another one right here that I could show you, and the emblem looks a little bit different. You see here it says WS. This is a series called The Authority, and there's some of those in there as well. Well, you could take about 50 of those Wildstorm comic books and you could lot them together and sell them for about $35. Now, you might say when you hear that, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. You're not getting a lot of money per comic. But that's why it's important to remember how I wound up sourcing these through the storage unit, and that there are a lot of other things in there already that I have sold off and made my money back on. So a lot of those Dungeons and Dragons books, a lot of the fantasy role-playing games that were in there. So this represents all profit. So if I could take 50 of these books and sell them for $35, well, I'm already at the rate that the comic book dealer would give me in his shop for 800 books. So that's how you have to look at it, and that's why I take some extra time and put that into getting as much value as I can out of these boxes. I saw a recent comp on the Wildstorm books that someone sold 85 mixed issues for $90. So, you know, it's just another example right there. Now, something else you could do is you could mix things from different collections. So if you happen to go out and buy a lot of different comic book collections, remember some of what the titles are, things that you haven't sold, and think of ways to combine them together just by the same title sometimes. So these are a good example of this right here. You're gonna see here, there's a little imprint here. It says Amalgam Comics. Now, an amalgam is a combination of things, and the reason why they use that title is it's basically a combination of a Marvel comic book and a DC comic book. So they take two characters and they combine them together. Like they took Batman and Wolverine and they combined them together and they called them Dark Claw. Or this one here, which says Amazon, this is actually a combination of Wonder Woman and Storm. Now, individually, try to sell this book and it's gonna be really tough. But if you find the 24 issues and have the complete set of it, you could sell those for about $100. And I have a lot of amalgams from other collections that I've purchased, and I know I have the 24. So there you go. I could just mix and match from different collections, put them together, and extract the value out this way. Yeah, I only may have 5 or 6 of them from here, but combine them with other collections, and there you go. That's another method to extract value. Okay, now here's a trick that I like to do if I have a single issue like this. It's just one issue in the whole series and it's impossible to sell it. So this one here, Batwoman, I could list this and chances are nobody is going to buy this if I keep it up even for years. I mean, yeah, I guess I shouldn't say technically impossible. Maybe someone will buy it, but the chances are super, 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 super low. So what would I do with something like this? I would take this Batwoman comic and I would look around in my box and I would say, you know what? Well, I have a lot of Batgirl comics, and Batgirl is definitely more popular than Batwoman. So I'll just lot the Batgirls up together. I'll toss the Batwoman comic in there, and that will help me get rid of that book, and it will add a little bit of value to someone who feels like, you know what, I'm getting an extra comic book with this guy, or maybe you throw in an extra 2 or an extra 3, and that's how you get rid of it. And again, you're also subtly increasing the value for the buyer. Okay, let's move on to our next comic book selling strategy, which is lotting issues together by story title, not book title. This is a good example of this. I've shown this in other videos before, but again, if you're new, this says Blackest Night Secret 6 on it. Well, Secret 6 is the actual title of the book. Blackest Night is not. The way to figure this out, because it could be very, very confusing, especially if you're new to comic books, is you have to open up the comic book, look inside at the bottom of the first page, or sometimes on the back page for modern issues like this. You will see at the very bottom where it has the copyright date, it will tell you what the actual title of the book is, and it'll usually say that in all caps. So for this one, it's going to say Secret 6, but it's not going to say Blackest Night. Again, Blackest Night is the story title, so there was a story theme that coursed throughout several books. So for example, they may start it at Secret 6, and then in this particular issue for Green Arrow, they may continue it. I'm just making this up right now. And then they may continue it from there in Green Lantern. And you could see there again, it says Blackest Night. This was a way for the comic book companies to get you to buy titles that you might not otherwise get. Now, what to do when you get a collection like this? You got to make a decision based on, well, do I have all of the Secret Sixes? Well, if you have all the Secret Sixes, then you just sell those. If you have all the Green Lanterns consecutive or the Green Arrows, you sell those. But if you don't have all those, don't take these out individually and just have 1 or 2 Secret 6 books, because that's going to be very difficult to sell. You're better off just keeping them lumped together by theme and lotting them together in the box when you organize it this way. So in my box, this actually is organized by Blackest Night. So another example of this would be the Flashpoint series. So I have these organized in my comic box under F for Flashpoint, not for E, Emperor Aquaman, and not under S for Secret 7. These are all separate book titles, but I've lumped them together under the Flashpoint storyline because that is going to be a much easier way to sell these. And this is just some separate one that just happened to be in there. Okay, so the next comic book selling strategy to lot things together to make them sell faster is to combine similar titles. So I'm not talking about similar characters like Batwoman and Batgirl, but similar titles. Like for example, I just have one Dark Avengers comic book, and if I list this, it's going to be very difficult to sell that. But I do have a bunch of Avengers Academy books here, and if I take the Dark Avengers book and I lot it together with this, that will make it a much easier sell. Everything that I am telling you here in this video as a strategy are all things that I have done before to combine lots of items and milk as much value as possible out of these collections that most people would just give away to the comic book shops for, like I said, 20 bucks a box. Not gonna happen here. Okay, now I always say to look for mini-series because it's really easy to check the comps on a mini-series and just come in at the best value. But sometimes you're gonna come across some mini-series that are complete, and even though they look like they're cool, you're gonna look them up and you're gonna see that they don't sell. And this is a great example. So this lot here, it's 2 sets of Gunwitch. Now it's a set of 3 and there's 6 books total because I have issue 1, 2 copies, and you can see here there's these cool like Halloween characters on it. So remember this guy in just a moment. I'm going to show you something about that. Here's issue number 2, and here's 2 of the issue number 3s. So again, 2 sets of them, but they don't sell. So what do we do with it? Well, guess what? Keep your eyes open. It's kind of like almost playing the game Memory, where you have to look for similar themes and just keep them in mind for using them in combos. Because this one here, Nocturnal's Witching Hour, this one has sold for about $14. And so what I could do is I could take this book and I could list it, and as a bonus, I will throw in one of these sets together. And now, instead of selling this one for $13.99, I could start it at $19.99 and I might not get $19.99 out of it, but maybe I get $18.99 or $17.99. I make an offer and I get more than I would have gotten out of this otherwise, and I also get rid of these book sets. So that's another strategy, is looking for similar characters and similar themes. Like you can see the scarecrow there. So it's kind of a combination of some of the strategies that I told you about earlier. Now, another thing you could do is you could put comic book grab bags together, like lots of 10, and you have to say in general kind of what's in there. Like you don't have to say the specific issue numbers, but you might say, like, for example, you'll get 5 Marvel comic books from the 1990s and 5 DC comic books, or 5 independent titles, which is what we call any comic book that's not from Marvel and DC. And you could even say what the cover value would be if you added them all up and something like that. So you could put little grab bags together. You could look them up on eBay and check the comps on putting together miscellaneous grab bags. Another thing you could do is just take 50 random modern books and just put them all together. Like if you have a bunch of different titles that just aren't selling and there's just like 1 or 2 of them or 3 or 4, just take them together, put all those different things together, put them in one big lot and put them up on an auction, start it at $9.99 and just see where it goes. And that'll just be another way that you could get rid of them. And my experience in doing that is that they're usually not going to sell for $9.99. You'd be surprised what you could get out of some of these combinations, depending on how you stage the pictures and stuff like that. So that's about it. Overall, I'm still pleased with what I wound up getting out of here, even though this is not like any of the other unboxings that we did. I still feel that we could get some good value out of these 2 boxes, even though, like I said, a lot of people would look at this and just turn them into the comic book dealer. But I hope that these strategies that I passed on to you today can be helpful if you wind up getting a comic book lot that has boxes and issues that are of this quality. It's gonna happen. It's just going to be part of the deal when you pick up a massive haul like this, is you're gonna get things like this as part of it. So you need to know strategies on how to deal with it. If you feel that this video helped you, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you come to my Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center, and come by to my Instagram page. That's @prime_time_treasure. I'll see you back at the next video, everyone. Take care.